Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Mechell, and welcome to your personalized piano recital compilation. I've gone back and brought out and rediscovered a number of recordings from my past and put them together into a compilation for you. And I hope you enjoy this music just as much as I do as you listen to the concert. Let's see here. There are a couple things that I'd like you to keep in mind as you listen to this concert. One, always be listening for dynamics. Dynamics are things such as piano or forte. It's how loud or soft something is. And so if you're extremely loud and then all of a sudden you're extremely soft, for example, I want you to be aware of that. Other things to listen for are things like articulations. Articulations are how the notes are actually played. So a good example would be a staccato. If a staccato is on a note, you would play it very disconnected in comparison to the notes around it and also the note itself. Or the opposite would be a legato. If you had legato on that particular part of the phrase, you'd play things very connected and together. So listen for things like accents also, where the note is accented. And listen for numerous types of articulations. How are the notes played? The third thing, and the last thing I kind of want you to think about, although I suppose you should be thinking about many things, is the idea of what is the style and what is the general aesthetic of what you're listening to. Is it extremely hectic and all over the place? Is it very calming? Is it, I don't know, majestic or funny or not funny or incredibly beautiful or maybe funny and beautiful? I don't know. But listen to the style and start to think of some words on how best it is to express some of those ideas. And I hope you enjoy this music as much as I do. Enjoy. So the first piece you're going to listen to is by a composer with the name of Domenico Scarlatti. Scarlatti's dates are 1685 to 1757, which is interesting because that puts him squarely in the Baroque period. And why that's even more interesting is Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, who many of us have heard of course, he dies in 1750. And he thoroughly epitomizes the style of the Baroque. And so historians come around and they say, well, I suppose the Baroque period should end in 1750, but Scarlatti was no Baroque slouch either, and he still continued on for a number of years. So the point I'm making is that the differences between these musical periods are not always so clear-cut and dry into very specific moments of time. Of course, these different styles and trends changed gradually over periods of time, and historians just choose 1750 because it's a convenient way to do it. Scarlatti's Sonata in E major, K380, is the piece that I'm going to be playing, and it's in two sections, the A and the B section. That's a binary form. And what happens is you play the A section and then you repeat it. And then you play the B section and then you repeat that. And my challenge to you as you're listening is to, the first time through, listen. And then the second time through, listen to something different in the music. Listen to some other aspect or musical variable in the music and see if you can talk about that. So I hope you enjoy this piece. It's fantastic, or at least I hope it is, and I hope you enjoy. Now, unlike Scarlatti, Beethoven, Ludwig van Beethoven, is actually one of the few composers to comfortably bridge two different musical periods, the classical and the romantic. He was born in 1770 and he died in 1827. The start of the Romantic period is somewhere in the 1815, 1820-ish, give or take. It's a very complicated and long conversation, so let's not go there. Now, the piece you're going to be listening to me play is a Beethoven sonata, and it's Opus 109, so it's one of his late sonatas. He actually wrote 32 piano sonatas, and what's particularly fascinating is if you look at the first one and then you gradually look at all of them until you finally get to the last one, you see a very clear pattern from his early classical style to his late and adventurous romantic style. Now, what you want to be listening for in this piece are a number of things. First, you want to be listening for an extreme use of registry or registral shifting. So sometimes your hands will be in the middle, sometimes they will be far apart and not close together. Sometimes both hands will be really low, or sometimes both hands will be really high. So the point is that he's using the full length of the instrument, which, by the way, back then was still not 88 keys. And in fact, the majority of the pianos that existed back then were not able to use, or were not able to play a sonata of his, actually. It's called the Waldstein Sonata. And when he wrote it, there was a kind of a new piano that had all the notes that were needed to play it, and the vast majority of people didn't have the piano to actually play the sonata, so he just kind of said, well, people will have to suffer and figure it out themselves. To which I suppose they did, and then they started to popularize having larger pianos. Notice, by the way, that this sonata, Opus 109, the one I'm going to be playing, is not in two parts. So the sonata form has changed quite a bit over the years, definitely quite a bit since Scarlatti. Instead of being in two sections, it's actually in various movements. And the last movement, the one that you're going to be listening to today, is itself a form. And it's a theme and variations form, which means that you have a main theme. And then after that, you have a bunch of different variations on that theme. This is definitely not typical of sonata form to have a theme and variations in it. Although Mozart did do it slightly earlier, this is not certainly too conventional. So I hope you enjoy listening to this one also, and I'll see you afterwards. I also completely forgot to add that Beethoven, by this point in his life, was completely deaf, or at the very least, very close to it. And it's absolutely mind-numbing that someone could write a piece like this without even hearing it. I guess he heard it all in his head. So keep that in mind as you listen to this. What a truly wonderful piece. The next composer we're going to talk about is Robert Schumann. Robert Schumann is thoroughly a romantic composer, and he was born in 1810 and he passed away in 1856. Now, the main thing to think about him for right now is that he loved puzzles and books and intellectual complexity of things. In fact, he was born into a house where his father owned a bookstore and was a lexicographer, among other things. And he even wrote for some articles and papers and things. And so Schumann loved this and he was obsessed with this stuff. And he decided ultimately to not be a poet, but he ultimately decided to become a composer after quite a life's journey early on in his life. And he decided to utilize some of these concepts that he read about in these books in the composition of his pieces. So, for example, one of the things he loved in books were these puzzles where there were hidden meanings behind the words. And in some of his pieces, he'll hide his name in the notes themselves, and he'll put it upside down to symbolize something, and he'll put it backwards to symbolize something else. Or maybe you'll have a series of notes that actually refer to the name of a town where he met his girlfriend previously, that kind of stuff. It's significantly more complicated than that, but the one main thing that I want you to think about for this particular piece is how different various parts of this piece are. For one, you're going to have extreme craziness, and then all of a sudden, it will be the exact opposite. It'll be very serene and calm. And the literary idea that Schumann is alluding to here is this idea of complete opposites and how you can't have that it doesn't make sense until you look at both of the opposites. In other words, it's a concept called teleology. Teleology is where the specific function of one thing doesn't come into focus until you look at the totality of the system around it. In other words, let's say you're, I don't know, walking around a car shop, and in the car shop you come across a bolt, and you pick it up and you say, what is this bolt? It makes no sense. And then you come around the corner and you see a car engine, and oh, okay, there's the function of the bolt. Oh, I understand. It goes into the engine and now it's going to work. So the same concepts are pervasive in music also, and certainly in this piece. Whereas if you didn't have the opposites to compare each other with, they wouldn't really be that extreme. In other words, if the whole piece was just really loud and really crazy, well, then it would just be a really loud, crazy piece with nothing to reference that craziness to. So concentrate on how quickly and different the sections are. One last thing about this. Schumann is actually referencing and expressing himself through personalities that were in his head. This is true. He was obsessed with this idea of having kind of internal personalities, and he would go to the grocery store and pick things out under this personality, and go to the bookstore and pick a book out that this personality would enjoy. And the main personalities in his head were Florestan, who is the crazy, rambunctious one. And this is in contrast to Eusebius, the very pensive and restrained and thoughtful one. And hilariously, he had a third personality in his head by the name of Rero, which happens to be the first, or the last two letters of Clara's first name, Clara Schumann being the love of his life and eventual wife in 1840. And R.O. at the end of Rero, R.O. are the first two letters of his name also. And Rero was supposed to be the mediator between Florestan and Eusebius. So it gets kind of crazy very quickly. But the point is that those two personalities, through Rero, produce Schumann, and he's writing this music with these back and forth types of styles, And it's really a shout out to the books that he was reading, some of the books that he was studying and learning about. Jean Paul, E.T.A. Hoffman, a lot of these early intellectual romantic writers. So here's the piece in its totality. It was written in 1838 in, I think, disturbingly enough, a series of 4 days, I believe, or a very short amount of time. And it's truly a spectacular work of art, and I hope you enjoy it. last piece comes from a composer by the name of Frédéric Chopin. Chopin was a Polish composer, although he spent a lot of his life in France. He wrote primarily, and he's one of the few composers in history where he composed primarily for one instrument. In this case, it's the piano. There might be a few things for other instrumentations, but it was pretty much always a focus on the piano. And he wrote a significant amount of stuff: polonaises, scherzos, preludes, ballades, etudes, waltzes. I mean, it goes on. It's a mazurkas. I mean, tons of different stuff. And I'm going to be playing you his third scherzo. This is in C sharp minor, and I hope you truly enjoy this piece. It comes from 2008, so I had to go back to quite a while ago to find this recording, and I hope you enjoy it. So there it is. I hope you enjoyed the concert, and I thoroughly enjoyed putting all of this together for you. As you go away, there is one main question, or two main questions, that I'd like to posit towards your direction. And that is, what is the difference between just kind of nonchalantly listening to something versus actually actively listening to something? What's the difference between sitting there and doing the dishes and having something on in the background versus putting something on, turning off all other distractions, sitting down, you have the score in front of you, and you are actively listening? So, my question to you is, what is the difference between those two things? And is there value to both of them, or neither of them, or just one of them? And what are your thoughts on that? My second question is, does listening to a piano recital and some guy stand up here and talk to you, does this help you become a better musician? Does it help you, let's say you're learning clarinet? Are you going to be a better clarinetist now? Or what about non-musical things? Does listening to music help your uh, mass comm degree or your English degree? Is there any sort of connection between all of these concepts? Does listening to music help change you not only as a musician, but a person? So I'm interested in your answers to that, and I would include those in your paper. I thoroughly enjoyed doing this, and best of luck with everything. Please say hi to my dad for me. Goodbye.